Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time you're listening. Happy Thanksgiving from all of us here at the Fins Talk Sports Network. Welcome into Touchdown in Paradise. I'm Justin.
I'm Joe.
I'm Russ.
And there's one more of us usually, right? I think we're missing something.
He's on another sabbatical, Justin.
I mean,
He's finding his inner self.
I came back when I came back home, and I gave him that nickname. He was like, "Why am I sabbatical, Pete?" I'm like, "Dude, you missed like it's already been 2 times, and now we're up to 4. Sabbatical Pete just fits perfectly."
You know, after the season he's had with picking some just atrocious games, he needs to go on a sabbatical, re-find himself, because at 50 points or whatever he's at now,
I'll give Pete had a good week, but this is the last week of regular season play, so Pete's he needed to pick some upsets, and then he would just keep on going for the covers. I'm like, we've told you billions of times those are little points. Maybe that works in the beginning of the year, but now you're down 27.
And let's ask the man, Justin, has he put in his picks this week?
Well, I actually just got a text from him after I reminded him we're doing the show now. If you want to get your picks in, do it now. He said, "Lol, F it. I lost anyways. Thanks for letting me know."
Sabbatical Pete at his finest.
Hey, at least he's honest. He knows he's the loser. He came in 4th. I think we should come up for a punishment for him.
I was thinking the same thing, but we've got to jump right into the news here. Some unfortunate news. Florida State quarterback Jordan Travis went down with a gruesome lower leg injury in the first quarter of FSU's win against Northern Alabama, where he ran for a first down and got sandwiched between 2 defenders and carted off the field, hospitalized over the weekend. He did announce on social media that his college career is officially over. This was his last year of eligibility. We do send all of our well wishes to Jordan, his recovery. But I want to start with Russ here. What are Florida State's chances of getting into the playoff now?
I mean, I think it's dwindling, but I mean, if they say they do win out, I mean, would you if they win this week, win the ACC, they got to, even though no Jordan Travis, they still have a shot. I mean, if they go 12-0, 13-0, whatever it is, I mean, you still got to consider them, even though you can't keep them out just because of an injury.
And Joe, if they do end up beating Florida this week, which I believe they lost Graham Mertz, so it could be an easier win, what are their chances of beating Louisville and Charlotte for the title?
Well, again, football is a team sport. It's, there are 11 men on the field at one time. So, to say one guy losing him is, the straw that broke the camel's back. But again, Jordan Travis was a hell of an athlete, hell of a quarterback. It's going to be tough, but I do know that their backup quarterback does have some experience playing. He's not like a freshman, that's just been hanging out. But it does make the road a lot more difficult. And even the Florida game, even without Graham Mertz,
who went down with a
for some reason I
was
going to say his last name was Graham for whatever. Anyways, they're playing at the Swamp, and Florida's had a very bad year, but for whatever reason they play better in the Swamp. It's a rivalry game, so again, do not overlook Florida in that game. But I think if they get past Florida, that Louisville game is going to be tough. But again, Louisville has to get past Kentucky this week. So, there's a lot of games with a lot of implication still to be had.
Mm-hmm. This is probably the most exciting time of the season because if there's still a lot of teams in contention, this is the part where things really get sorted out. We've got a lot of games on the slate to pick today, and we're going to get there in just a couple minutes. But let's move on here real quick. It was announced today, Northwestern has their $800 million stadium proposal approved. Wildcats, of course, dismissed Pat Fitzgerald as coach at the beginning of this year for hazing allegations while he was coach. Is this team worth $800 million? I'd like to know from you guys. Start with Joe.
No, the best answer, but they have the money, so why not? And hope that making a $800 million stadium brings in a coach that wants to be there and can bring in some kids that want to play for Northwestern. I mean, I don't know. I think it's no one really cares about Northwestern anyways. I mean, they're an academic school. So, no offense, Northwestern fans out there. I may have you as my upset this week, but again, $800 million for a stadium that probably will never be filled. That seems like a lot.
The proposal, I believe, has 35,000 seats, which is super small for a Power 5 school stadium. Russ, any thoughts on this?
No, I just echo what Joe said. He hit on the nose. They're going bowling this year.
Hey, that's a big accomplishment on its own to have your coach get fired before the season starts, and then you have this guy, not much experience, come in and take him to 6 wins. Hey, good for Northwestern.
Give Northwestern credit. They just keep finding ways to win. And I mean, it's not attractive. It's not fun to watch, but it gets W's. They're going bowling, unlike Colorado. So, I mean, they're doing something right.
Yeah. Next up here, Michigan earned their 1,000th win as a program with their win over Maryland this week. They celebrated on the field. Jim Harbaugh, of course, was at the hotel, not on the field. What does this accomplishment mean for a program like Michigan and just college football in the whole? Russ, start with you.
It means a lot. I mean, that win was big. They're one step closer to the Big Ten championship game. So it means a lot. And that was a hell of a game. I was the only one who picked that all right. Maryland's a hell of a team, so I don't really hold it against Michigan. Maryland's a hell of a team. But, yeah, that means a lot. That's a big milestone.
Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I think Russ said it perfectly. I mean, whenever you win 1,000 games, I mean, I know the history of Michigan is long. It's, it's had its ups and downs, when you had Brady Hoke and Rich Rod as your coach for a while there. But to say you've won 1,000 games, that's nothing not to celebrate. So, congratulates to Michigan. I think they're going to get 1,001 this weekend. So we'll see.
And our reaction to the latest CFP rankings, not much except for Washington has leaped over Florida State for that 4th spot. The Pac-12 is coming down to the wire. We've got the rivalry games this week. Any other surprises or anybody overrated, underrated in your eyes coming in?
I'm going to jump in here right here, Justin. So I definitely have little thoughts on this.
Mm-hmm.
Georgia's perfect at 1. They're number 1. But if we're going off of resume, Washington, even though some of their wins has not been the prettiest, they have the best resume out of everybody. They beat Oregon. It was looking like one of the best teams in college football. They beat Oregon State this week in a nasty game up there in Corvallis. And then they beat Arizona, which is looking better and better. So they should be number 2 because they have the best resume in college football right now, even though they're not getting some of these wins aren't pretty. They're W's.
No, that's a good point. And I'd say if Washington and Oregon both win this week and one of Michigan or Ohio State loses, they do deserve to be that number 2 team. Joe, what about you?
I mean, honestly, I think if you just do the simple eye test, Michigan is better than Ohio State. I think for whatever reason, the committee is very much high on Ohio State.
Better schedule, that's probably it.
I mean, it has to be strength of schedule. That is the only thing because, I mean, besides Marvin Harrison Jr., their offense is kind of meh. And their defense is legit. Washington, I agree with Russ. Washington's strength of schedule alone should be a reason why they're 2. The other interesting one for me, and I know it will work itself out here in a couple weeks, they have Louisville 10, who is 10-1. They have one bad loss against, I believe, Pitt. Behind Missouri, who lost to Georgia pretty soundly. And then who else?
LSU also lost.
And they lost to LSU.
So a 1-possession game.
I would think again you would put Louisville a little bit higher. I know that will work itself out in the conference championship. But really, as well as I know they have 3 losses, but Arizona should be higher up there. They've been a hot team for the past 5-6 weeks. Why is Iowa 17? I know they have 2 losses, but they don't they did not play a tough schedule, and they play very boring football if you're going off an eye test. Other than that, Tulane hasn't moved, and they have that 1 loss to Ole Miss, who is 12. So it's interesting. Again, I think a lot of this will shake out in the next 2 weeks, but there's a lot of interesting ones. It's like you seem to be a little too high, you seem to be a little too low. I'm excited to see what happens in the next couple of weeks.
It's interesting with Arizona too. Arizona was picked to finish 8th or 9th in the Pac-12, and they're the first team in college football this year to beat 4 ranked opponents.
Mm-hmm.
With that there alone, they should be higher than 15. I mean, look, LSU 8-3. What ranked opponents have they beat? I mean, they beat Texas A&M, not ranked. They beat Kentucky, not a great team. And then Oklahoma. Oklahoma is probably where they should be. Ole Miss, I think, could be a little higher. Penn State, they had 2 big games, and they lost those 2 big games.
Joe, this week is Texas A&M for LSU, by the way.
Oh, that's right. Okay, that's it. Well, then LSU lost to Florida State. They lost to Alabama.
They beat Florida. They beat Army. They beat Auburn. They beat Mizzou. They beat.
So Mizzou's probably their best win. Mizzou's probably their best win.
Yep, I'd say
they lost to Ole Miss. Mm-hmm.
LSU is definitely overrated in my opinion. It's just interesting. I think it will all work itself out, but it's some of these teams I'm like, really? Liberty's 11-0, and they're just breaking in the top 25. And I realize, again, it's Liberty, but if you're undefeated, you should be higher than Clemson, who's 7-4. Like I realize Clemson is on. Yeah,
schedule.
I don't know. I guess in some ways you have to look at the record and be like, okay, you're 11-0. Like you should be higher than a team that's 7-4. Like Tennessee is 7-4 and they're 21. Like I don't think Tennessee's beaten really anyone of note. They've beaten the people they should have. So it's like, okay. Like NC State is 22. They're 8-3. They beat Clemson. Oh, okay. Congratulations. I mean, a lot of people beat Clemson before they figured it out. So it's interesting. I think it will shake out, though. I think they'll ultimately get it right. And really all that matters is the top 4. And ultimately, as of right now, we know 2 and 3 is one of them are going to be gone. And ultimately, we know potentially Washington and Oregon are going to potentially play each other if one of them don't choke. So, that's 7-8. Texas and Alabama, those 2 look really interesting. So there's a lot to play for still.
Mm-hmm. We'll talk more about scenarios next week and maybe later in the show. But next up, now we got to go address the elephant in the room here. Russ here is a big fan of James Madison. James Madison had game day this week. James Madison came up short in overtime as game day and the Joe Bros were in Harrisonburg. Joey Aguilar for the Mountaineers, 318 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. For JMU, Jordan McLeod, 289 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 pick. Unfortunately, to every fan's dismay, the NCAA denied their appeal to get into a bowl game this year or the championship game. But I want to give my congrats to the Dukes for a great season, man. You got to give them the credit where it's due. Give them their respect.
I mean, App State's a battle-tested team. They've known to take down people, take down giants. So, I mean, even though they were 6-4, that's a hell of a program.
Agreed.
I mean, James Madison, athletically is having a phenomenal year. I mean, basketball, women's soccer, that program is a program that if anyone's up and coming wants to probably be a part of because they're doing something phenomenal. So It's a tough
Hey, Dabo,
loss.
you should buy stock in JMU.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, again, is it a one-off year? No, I mean, they've been good for the past couple of years, as Russ would probably know. So, I mean,
Good for a while.
again, I think this is just coming down to it was a big moment for them. They played well. They lost in overtime to a team that, as Russ said, has beat Michigan in the Big House, has beaten some other big-name teams. They've been there. So, I mean, I think we'll be talking about JMU for the foreseeable future.
Up next here, Washington's defense held strong as the Huskies topped Oregon State 22-20 up there in Corvallis. Michael Penix, 162 yards, 2 touchdowns. Rome Odunze, the man, the myth, the legend, 106 yards. Both of those touchdowns from Penix caught. Damian Martinez, the running back for Oregon State, 123 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. DJ didn't do much. But because of this, Washington did clinch a spot in the Pac-12 championship game. What do we think about Washington in this game? I know we've got thoughts about where they belong, but in general, what is their chance at this point to maybe win the national championship? Start with Russ.
I mean, I think they got a chance. I still think, they got to get through, Washington State in the Apple Bowl this week. So even though Washington State's reeling big time, that's still a rivalry game. And then possibly get past Oregon in the Pac-12 title game. I mean, they got a big win this week against Oregon State because that was a nasty game. And yeah, I know Penix didn't look all that great, but it was nasty for 3 quarters of just torrential downpour. So you can't really, and they came out with the dub. Defense played really good. What's his name? Was it Jabari Muhammad, their cornerback, 2 picks. Guy looks like a stud. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I definitely think they're right there. And like I've said, they're the most battle-tested team in college football, at least in that top 4.
I mean, it's the same conversation we probably have had about Georgia, about Michigan, about other teams. Teams that want to make the playoff win games, no matter how it is. And this game, as Russ said, was gross. The weather was awful. It was cold. It was an away game. And that's what teams, championship caliber teams do. They win in these environments. The score doesn't look impressive. Penix's stats don't look impressive. But again, all that matters is they left with a W and they got it. They do have a tough game against Wazoo, and Wazoo just curb stomped Colorado last week. So you can't overlook them. But luckily, if I do recall, that game is at Washington. So home court always helps. But I think they are, with their resume, if they win out, I don't see how they're not in the playoff.
And we're going to move right here into the Russ Report. Where are we at?
All right, boys. I'm still on top. I got 77. I had an okay week. Joe's at 71.5. He had an okay week, too. Justin, you're 66.5 or 65.5, excuse me.
Bad week for me.
Yeah, very bad week. Pete, he's mathematically out. It really doesn't matter how many he's got, but I'll give Pete credit. He did have a very good week last week. Pete hit a lot of calls, so a little too late, but at least he made a little effort because he was throwing up some 3-pointers there. So, Pete's not here with us, but good job this week, Pete.
How much did he end up with?
Russ, what was his score?
Pete's at 56.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I know he called App State. He called a
handful of games. He hit a handful where, he was making some calls on the under when we all went over. So I mean, he had a good week. He had a solid week, but we all missed our upset picks of the week, so that hurts.
Mm-hmm.
Are we saying this is? We're calling it after this week for our points, or are we just going to go straight into championship week?
Let's go to championship week. Let's make it a bit more fun.
Gives Pete one more week, just in case. Maybe triple or nothing.
He just said, F it, I'm going to lose.
Well, he's not out of it yet, and he doesn't know it. Okay. Now, moving along here to the Paradise Parlay, starting with the state full of bourbon, Kentucky at Louisville. Louisville is a 7-point favorite, 50.5 over-under. The Cards have a minus 290 money line favorite. UK, meanwhile, plus 235. I'm going to start here and say Louisville's focused. They're going to try and just put them away early because they know they've got Florida State coming up. So I'll say Louisville's going to cover. I'm going to go the under here, and I'll take the Cards money line. Joe.
Yeah, I think Louisville, watching a little bit of them play last week, they look locked in, and I think now with what do I keep saying, Travis Hunter, Jordan Travis going down, I think they smell blood in the water. Kentucky is not what they were at the beginning of the season. So I think it's at Louisville. Louisville, I'm taking Louisville -7. I'm taking Louisville money line, and I'm going to take the over.
Russ.
Yeah, I'm with Joe. I'm taking Louisville across the board. I'm going to take the over.
Moving along here, the Iron Bowl, Alabama at Auburn. Bama is a minus 14.5 point favorite, 48.5 over under. Bama minus 700, Auburn plus 500. Let's start with Russ here, our Southern gentleman.
Yeah, I'm all on Alabama. They're rolling, so they'll cover. They're going to win, and I think I think I'll hit the over. Yeah, I'll hit the over. Yeah, I'm going to go the over. Sorry about that.
No worries, Joe.
Yeah, talk about a shock. New Mexico, or was it New Mexico State upsetting Auburn? You think Auburn was looking past that game for this one this week? That was pretty wild. But still, we've seen some crazy things happen at the Iron Bowl. This is not one of those years. Whatever's happened, Alabama's offense has figured it out. So Alabama's going to cover. Alabama money line, and I'm with you, Russ. I think Alabama's just going to run all over them. So I'm taking the over.
I'm feeling of going a little bit different. I'll still take Bama to win, but I'm going to have Auburn covering here, and I'm going to go the under. I think it's going to be one of those ugly games, just like the year Bryce Young won the Heisman. They came in there. They almost lost. They probably should have lost, but then Bryce Young and his heroics came back and won it. And Auburn, I think they were looking ahead a little bit, but that just adds more fuel to the fire. They didn't want nothing more than to ruin their rival season. I know that Alabama's still going to go to Atlanta, but if they can knock them out of the playoff, that'll be their Super Bowl. And Hugh Freeze has beaten Nick Saban twice. Let's not forget. So moving along here. Russ, you got that?
Yeah, I got it. Don't.
Okay, cool. The Apple Cup, Washington State at Washington. UW minus 16.5 point favorite at home, 68.5 over under. UW minus 850, WSU plus 575. Starting here with Joe.
Yeah, I'm taking Wazoo to cover. I know Wazoo, is not having the greatest year, but this is a big rivalry game. I ultimately do think the Huskies are going to win. Since it is at home and they have everything to be playing for. But I definitely think there are going to be points, so I'm going to take the over.
Russ.
Yeah, I'm going to echo what Joe says. 16.5 is a lot. This is a rivalry game. I would say maybe 13 to 16 range, so I would hit the cover on that. But Washington is going to win. They're on a mission, and even though Washington State beat Colorado, they're still kind of reeling a little bit, and there's going to be a lot of points, so I'm going with the over.
Mm-hmm. This is tough because I feel like Washington State can score. They can put up a fight, so I'm definitely going the over. That's not even a question. I'll take UW to win. They're on a mission. They're locked in, but I also do think that Michael Penix just feels that he's so close to winning the Heisman, and he wants to put on a big display, so I'll take Washington to cover. Florida State at Florida. an intense in-state rivalry. Florida State is a 6.5-point favorite, despite not having Jordan Travis. 50 is the over-under. FSU minus 270, UF plus 220. From my experience watching these two teams, I don't care who's in and who is out. It's just about who's having the better year that usually wins this game. And Florida State is having the better year. I know it's in Gainesville. I know the Swamp is very tough to play in. I just think that Florida State has got one last punch in him to throw. So I'll take Florida to cover. I think it's going to be about a field goal or 4-point game. I'm going to take the under as well because both teams are not going to have their starting quarterback, and I'll take Florida State to win. Joe.
You took my script. Yeah, I mean, I think losing both quarterbacks, I think if Graham Mertz was playing, I think I would take Florida money line. But I think, again, it's who is the better team right now? Who's having the better season? That's Florida State. So money line Florida State. I'm taking Florida with the spread. I think this will be the sloppy game. I can see multiple turnovers on both sides. It's going to come down to
you say you're taking Florida State with the you said Florida with the spread.
Yeah, I'm taking Florida with the spread, and I'm taking Florida State money line, and I'm taking the under.
Yeah, I mean, you guys definitely echoed it. If Graham Mertz was playing, I think it comes a little closer, especially being in the Swamp. But they'll cover rivalry game. I don't know how many miles are between Gainesville and Tallahassee, but it's got to be 180. It's going to be a defensive ball game. I got the money line. Mike Norvell knows not to look past Florida, even though they're locked into the ACC championship game in Charlotte. But I think they'll pull it out, and I think definitely a defensive ball game with these two backup quarterbacks.
150 miles, in case anybody's
150.
wondering.
All right, I was close.
Yeah, good guess. Would you have gone the over or under?
I probably would have went the under just because I know Gainesville and even though Tallahassee is, far up there in the Panhandle, but Gainesville, I've driven through Gainesville.
Gainesville's a rockin' town if you've ever had the chance to go. Moving along here, not exactly a rivalry, but this game does matter for conference championship and playoff hopes. Texas Tech at Texas. Texas is a 13-point favorite at home, 53.5 over under. Texas minus 500 and Tech plus 380. Starting with Russ.
Yeah, I got Texas covering. I got the over, and I got Texas money line. We'll see them in Dallas.
At the beginning of this year, the commissioner of the Big 12 went to Texas Tech for a donor kickoff, I believe, and said, hey, you guys better take care of Texas this Thanksgiving, just like you did the last couple of years. And I don't know if Tech has been listening so much. They've struggled a lot this year. They did beat us last week, unfortunately, by a point. I just don't think they have enough to keep up. I know everybody's playing Texas pretty tough, so I'll take Tech to cover here. I think Texas will win by maybe a safety or a field goal. And I'm going to go the over here because it's the Big 12. And I'll take the Longhorns to win money line. Joe.
Yeah, I feel like this was probably the easiest of the games to pick this week. I think Texas is just a level above Tech. So I'm going to take Texas to cover. I'm taking Texas money line, and I'm going to take the over. I just think they're a class above.
Moving along. The Civil War, formerly known, now it's just the Oregon State-Oregon rivalry. Oregon is a 13.5-point favorite, 62 over-under. Oregon is a 575-point money line favorite, and OSU plus 425. Starting with Joe.
Yeah, I think this is going to go kind of similar to the Wazoo-Washington game. I think, both of the state schools, the Pac-2, are fighting to prove that the Pac-2 is legit. I think they're great teams. I think, they fought Washington. So look out. They may upset Oregon, but I don't think they will. I think they'll definitely cover the 13.5. I think it will be a touchdown or field goal game. I think it's also going to be pretty defensive, so I think it will be I'll take the under, but ultimately Oregon, Bo Nix, trying to compete, stay up with Penix and that Heisman. I think they get it done ultimately in the end.
Joe, you're calling Oregon State cover, right?
Yes, but Oregon to win money line.
Oregon money line.
Yes.
Russ, go ahead.
Why don't you go, Justin? I got some stuff I want to get off my chest on this game.
Okay, well, we'll wait that. Looking at this, Bodacious is in full effect. He had 6 touchdowns before the half last week. I know a lot of them were yards after catch, so his receivers are very talented, but that doesn't take away with how great he's been this season, how great he's been since he left Auburn to come to Oregon. And this is his last home game as a Duck. Something tells me that he's going to want to go out there and put on a show. I'll take Oregon to cover with that 13.5. I'll take the over. Why not? And Oregon money line here. Russ.
All right, so I'm going Oregon State to cover. 60. I'm with Joe. I'm going to go on the under, but I think Oregon wins. But the real caveat in this game is if Oregon State beats Oregon by way of Arizona beating Oregon State, Arizona will be going to Las Vegas. Arizona would be going to Vegas to play in the Pac-12 title game.
Assuming they beat Arizona State, which they probably will.
Assuming they beat it. But, I mean, they'll find out. They'll know before their game because Oregon plays on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
And we all know what the Territorial Cup means to U of A. That it's basically U of A. If you won in 11, but that one wins Arizona State, it's a good season.
I can't wait. I just can't wait for this weekend. And our game of the week here, or should I say the game of the week, Ohio State at Michigan. The Buckeyes travel to Ann Arbor this year. Michigan at home, minus 3.5 point favorite, 46.5 over under. Michigan minus 175 and Ohio State plus 145. I'm going to go first here. Looking at this here, I have not been impressed whatsoever with Ohio State all year. They've been winning close. They've been playing down to teams on the road. Yeah, they beat teams that they're supposed to that are not good. But then you look at a game like when they went to Madison, and Wisconsin was not good all year. They barely escape. They barely score any points. I know Marvin Harrison Jr. is a fantastic player. He's going to be a top 5 pick in the draft. I'm sure he'll find a way to get involved. But I just think that Michigan has just got a chip on their shoulder here because of what's going on. And Ryan Day, though, he's under a lot of pressure to win this game. This is probably going to be one of the closest matchups that we've ever seen in this rivalry. So I think it's going to be a 1-point win. And because Michigan's at home, I'll give it to them. I'll have Ohio State cover the spread here. I'm going to go the under just because I think it's going to be more of a defensive battle. I read this, or I heard this today on Colin Cowherd's show, that Ohio State is eighth in the Big Ten in rushing. Their run game is 8th in the Big Ten, not in the country, just the Big Ten, which is shocking. It's usually way up there within the national rankings. And I'll take the Wolverines' money line. Michigan gets into the Big Ten title game. Russ.
Yeah, I mean, I think Michigan will cover, but I still think it's going to be a close game. I think defenses are going to reign strong this week, so this is going to be the under. And Michigan's going to win, and we'll see them in Indianapolis.
Joe?
Can someone check for me what time is this game?
It's at noon.
It's the noon game. Okay.
Always the early game.
Yeah, always the noon kick or the
It's the early game. All right. Yeah, I think this is an interesting game. I definitely agree with you, Justin. This is probably one of the better games between these two in a while. I know that they've been entertaining, but this game this year just seems to be so much more blown up because of everything else going on around it. Michigan and Harbaugh, they're America's team now, apparently. It's them against the world. And then you have Ohio State, who've been crushed twice by Michigan the past 2 years. Ryan Day has a lot of pressure. I agree. I think this game could go either way. So I honestly think it comes down to two things. Who's at home? And similar to that Florida State game, it's who has been better this season. And I know you could say Michigan hasn't really played anyone. They struggled against Maryland. Where Ohio State, squeaked out a win at Madison. They beat Notre Dame, or Notre Dame beat themselves. And they haven't looked good. But ultimately, again, I think it's who's going to control the line of scrimmage, and I think that's Michigan. So I'm taking Michigan to cover the spread. I'm taking the under. I do agree both defenses are legit, and I think Michigan's going to win. And I, in a way, hope I am wrong on this one because I'd love to see Ohio State win, but I don't think it's going to happen. So Michigan to cover, under, and Michigan money line.
Something just rings in the back of my mind. If you remember a year ago, right after Michigan was eliminated by TCU, J.J. McCarthy was sitting at the podium and said, hey, you best believe we'll be back here. You can count on that. Like guaranteeing it pretty much. And I think he's right. I think Michigan is going to run the table here and get into the playoff. But remains to be seen. They've got their biggest game of the week, biggest game of the year this week. For our prediction segment, the upsets and the covers of the week.
Real quick, can I continue a name I just thought of for Texas A&M job? Yeah, I was thinking this week, and it pains me to say this, but what about Jed Fish? That guy turned a program around that had one loss, 3 years ago. I don't want to see it happen, but Texas A&M's got money. That just came to my mind on Saturday. I think that'd be a terrible pick selfishly for me because I want to see him stay, but probably a good pick for the Aggies.
Do they really want to go from a Fisher to a Fish?
Well, the Fisher couldn't catch any fish, so you got to go with the Fish.
You just caught a lot of money in that line. I'll show myself out after that one. That was terrible.
Are you allowed to make dad jokes even though you're not a dad?
That's my other dad joke. I can't tell dad jokes. I don't have kids.
Our boy JP does all the time.
I mean, JP is the only one because he's basically a dad without having kids.
He really is.
Very much.
Big fan of JP.
Shout out to JP, man.
Shout out JP.
Shout out JP.
Shout out Meanwhile Brewery in Austin, Texas. Check it out.
Yeah, go check it out if you live in Austin or anywhere in Texas. Go make the trip. Now for our upsets and covers of the week here, I'm going to start with Russ.
I'm going Air Force over Boise State. They getting 7 points.
Okay, +7. Joe.
I'm taking Northwestern over Illinois. As I said, they keep winning. It's not attractive, but they keep doing it. They're at 5.5.
Yes, the in-state rivalry. Chicago versus Urbana-Champaign. I'm going to go Boston College over Miami. Boston College hasn't been the best, but they're electrifying. Miami has taken a big step, not really back or forward, but not even improving this year. And I just think Miami's gassed out of it. So I'll take Boston College with the points.
What are they getting?
8.5.
8.5.
Now for the games we're watching, starting with Joe.
Honestly, I couldn't pick one. I just said I'm going to be watching as many as I can. Luckily some of our games are on Friday. I was just looking at that schedule. 1 second.
It's great. I love it.
It's again, reason why I love Thanksgiving and a reason why I am thankful, because this time of year you have college basketball, which I've been watching all day today. We have pro 3 games tomorrow. We have the Egg Bowl tomorrow at 4:30, Ole Miss, Mississippi State. Your upset game, Justin, is at 9 a.m. Friday.
You got the Civil War on Friday, or the Oregon Bowl.
Texas Tech is at 4:30. Michigan State versus Penn State. The list just goes on. I mean, it's insane. Like I couldn't pick a game. So I mean, I just said I'm going to probably have multiple TVs on. I'm going to have multiple laptops on. It's just going to be there's nothing better. I mean, maybe March Madness first weekend when you have again all those games on, but that's just one sport. It's heaven. It's heaven on earth essentially.
Mm-hmm. Almost heaven. Game I'll be watching here. Houston UCF. Will we go Boeing UCF? Or will Dana, they don't say Orlando, we got a problem, Holgerson's play spoiler on senior night? And Russ.
I mean, definitely echo what Joe says. Just watch some college football this weekend because there's so many games to watch. It's amazing. But definitely watching that Oregon State game because I definitely want to see if that Arizona State game would have some big implications if Oregon State can pull it out. I don't think it might happen. You never know. Oregon State's a good team. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, I'm watching the Wazoo Washington game. Obviously, Michigan. There's just too many to pick from to just pick one.
Yeah. Now for our question of the day. We've been doing these the last week or so here. This week's question, which rivalry game will be the highest scoring? Which one will be the lowest scoring? My pick here, highest scoring, LSU, Texas A&M. Just something tells me here it's going to be one of those like the Joe Burrow year where it went to, I believe, 74, 71, something like that. It was insane. And then lowest scoring, I'll take Indiana, Purdue. Purdue cannot score like their basketball team. Neither can Indiana. I think this is going to be like a 3-6 game. We'll see. And Joe.
Highest, I think, is going to be Wazoo, Washington. I just think both teams can put up points. Their defenses, specifically Washington's, is really good. But I just think that game's going to be electric. If I were to pick a game to watch, that would be it. The lowest scoring game, I think, is going to be Florida State. Again, both quarterbacks, starting quarterbacks are gone due to injury. I think it's going to be sloppy. I think it's going to be not a great game. Because of that, I think it's going to be low scoring as well.
Russ?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're definitely on the same page. I think they're great picks, both great. I agree with Joe. Wazoo, Washington State, those both offenses electric. I'm going to go with Arizona State. I think Arizona's defense is very good. So probably not a low-scoring game on Arizona's side, but I think they can hold the Sun Devils to 10 to 14 points. So I think I'll get it this week.
Okay. What do you think's your lowest scoring game, Russ?
Arizona State.
So what's your highest scoring game?
I got the Wazoo game.
Oh, okay.
I'm betting on Arizona's defense.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
To shut them down.
All right, let's see what the Wildcats can do to the Sun Devils. And
Pete will probably say the highest scoring game will be Notre Dame Stanford, just knowing Pete. And then the lowest scoring game for Pete will probably also be Notre Dame Stanford.
Well, Pete would also be like, it's going to be 66-3. We're going to kill them.
Oh, sabbatical Pete. I didn't know you were hanging out with Russ.
Yeah. He's down here in Southwest Florida.
Instead of Michigan, like you told us he'd be for Black Wednesday.
He lied to us.
Mm-hmm. And now for our stat of the week here, it's rivalry week. So let's highlight some of my favorite rivalry trophies. I'm going to share my screen here, see if we can get this going. There we go. Starting here with the Troll, Concordia versus St. Olaf. The Troll was adopted in 1974 to reflect the Norwegian heritage of both Minnesota schools, per USA Today HSS. As you can see here, the Troll guy right here, it's actually kind of badass, not going to lie.
Hey, Justin, I got a quick question. Is that Concordia St. Paul?
I just read Concordia, but let me take a
Because
look at
there's
your
a lot of
buddies.
Concordia. There's a lot of Concordias, but the one I know there's Concordia St. Paul, but I think there's a Concordia D3 as well too.
Mm-hmm.
In
It
many,
just said Concordia, so I've got to do some more research on that. I wonder what St. Olaf is. D3 as well?
I think that might be D3 because St. Olaf sounds like a D. I think it's a D3 program.
All righty.
Yeah,
I would also
Minnesota.
know, I would also know because Concordia St. Paul's in the Northern Sun, which my college was in. So shout out to the Northern Sun.
Yeah, Concordia College, D3, Minnesota, and then Concordia
Excellent.
College.
Great research, both of you. Appreciate that. Next up here, the Platypus Trophy, Oregon State. First introduced in 1959, the platypus is used to represent both schools with the duck bill and the beaver body. Platypuses are native to the PNW of Australia, of all places. But in this case, it's more than relevant to the PNW here in America with Oregon and Oregon State with the Platypus Trophy. And then I think the wildest one of all, and I just love this story here, the $5 Bits of Broken Chair Trophy. That this game already happened earlier this year, but I'm just finding this now. This is between Nebraska and Minnesota starting in 2014, so less than 10 years ago. There was a Twitter exchange between Goldie the Gopher from Minnesota and Fo Pelini, the famous parody Bo Pelini account on Twitter. What started as a bet for the 2014 Minnesota-Nebraska game, Fo Pelini said if Nebraska wins, Goldie gives FP I'm getting distracted here, gives FP $5. And if Minnesota wins, FP, gets to smash a wooden chair over your Goldie's back. Goldie replied, just as long as we can turn that into $5 or Bits of Broken Chair into a trophy for next year's game. This turned into the $5 Bits of Broken Chair trophy, complete with two $5 bills taped to the bottom of the trophy. The schools both ran with it, and now it's an annual charity fundraiser associated with the trophy. Raises money for two organizations associated with each university. One is Nebraska's Team Jack, which raises money to fund pediatric brain cancer research and work on creating awareness for the disease. It's named after Jack Hoffman, a cancer survivor who became a Nebraska spring game legend. And the other goes to University of Minnesota Masonic Children's Hospital. You love a good story. You love a wild-looking trophy like that. And you love a new age rivalry that was born when Nebraska moved to the Big Ten. Hey, props to both these schools. I've heard they're very friendly fan bases, and this is awesome. Love to see it. Love rivalry week for that reason. And now for our cheers of the week. Joe, how about you start this week?
My cheers is to Chip Kelly. He has been not the best coach since he's been at UCLA. He wasn't great for the Eagles. He's still living off of that Oregon reputation. He's been on the hot seat multiple years. He's massively overpaid. I think someone told me he is the highest paid public employee of the state of California, which is mind blowing to me. Fact check me if I'm wrong, but I would believe it. I feel like he should have been fired multiple times, but he just seems to squeak by and get a coach another year. If he gets fired at the end of this year, okay. But again, beat SC this past year, beat them handily. I think they keep him another year. So cheers to Chip Kelly and just survival, apparently. So good job, Chip.
Yeah, Chip.
Love it. Congrats, Chip. Russ, keep it going.
All right, so I got two this week. My first is Northwestern becoming bowl eligible with all the tumultuous things going on in their program this offseason. They're bowl eligible. They're going bowling. My second is we're seeing all these pregame speeches from coaches, Dan Lanning, Prime, but the best of them all, Matt Rule in Nebraska. I don't know if you guys saw it. That was heartwarming. So Northwestern, Matt Rule, man, you can fire some people up with that speech.
Russ, can you summarize it briefly real quick for those who didn't watch it?
it was just all talking about the people that brought them there, talking about the sacrifices their mother made for them, and why you are where you are is because basically your mother doing everything for you. It was pretty moving stuff.
Oh. Well,
For the
cheers
moms.
to Northwestern and Matt Rule and Nebraska.
Hey, and if they win this week, they become bowl eligible too.
First time in forever.
Yeah. So, at the beginning of the year, we were talking about first-year coaches, maybe, and Matt Rule's name was never mentioned in at all. So if they become bowl eligible.
And my cheer of the week to quarterback Jake Retzlaff, the first ever Jewish quarterback to start for BYU of all schools. He's one of five Jews who attend BYU and one of 3 Jews who are undergrads. BYU is approximately 98% Latter-day Saints. He and his family are all practicing Reform Jews and even jokes that he'll convert some of his Mormon teammates, according to Bro Bible. Retzlaff started in BYU's 31-24 loss to Oklahoma Saturday, posting 172 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 pick. To that I say, respect, one of us, sticking out, the black sheep of BYU. Oh, man, I hope everybody here on the show and listening to the show has a wonderful Thanksgiving. Thank you for tuning in with us
Happy
this week on
Thanksgiving.
Touchdown to Paradise here in the Fins Talk Sports Network. I'm Justin.
I'm Joe.
I'm Russ. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy Rivalry Week. We'll see you guys next week.